Welcome to Coaching in Session,
where limits end and growth begins.
Hosted by Michael Rearden.
This is your space to challenge the ordinary,
unlock your potential,
and step boldly into your next chapter.
Your mindset journey continues.
Welcome, Michal Gez, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. First of all, I always say this when someone has a very unique name. You have a very unique name, and I love it. And I know I'm going to love our conversation today. You do so many things. You have done so many things in your life. You're a speaker. You're a mindset coach. You have been a lawyer, and you're also an author of the book, The Empowered Child. And that is something that is near and dear to my heart today, whether it's helping parents with their child or helping you understand how your childhood was. Because I know in our world today, one of the things parents do well is trying to make their kids happy. I want to give my child the life that I never had. And to a degree, yes, that's a good thing. But to a degree, we know that can be a detriment for the child. It can lower self-esteem. It can create some challenges, whether it be behavioral, discipline, obedience, stuff like that. And this is all to say that the rearing of a child is not as easy as maybe what people think. You get a child, you feed them, give them some snacks, and send them off to school. And eventually, one day, they'll be a working member of society. But when I was a teacher, one of the things I noticed as they were graduating was how unprepared they were for the real world. This is not to say that the parents didn't love them. This is not to say that they didn't have all of the tools and the resources at their disposal. It's just, if you have all the resources to build a house and you don't have the blueprint, can you build? And today we're going to be talking about that blueprint. Today we're going to be talking about your work and how you help parents. If you could, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and of course, how you help people?
Sure. So my name is Michal Gez. I'm a speaker. I'm a mindset coach. I'm a lawyer, and I'm the author of The Empowered Child, which are parenting principles for raising independent, confident, resilient, and happy kids. I specialize in parenting, in self-development, in career growth, and relationship, and I help both individuals and organizations break through limitation and create meaningful change in their life. The main problem that I address in my work is that in today's world, we tend to learn life's most important lessons the hard way. Usually after years of setbacks, of failures, of challenges. And my question is why? Why do we, and especially why do our children have to stumble over and over again before we realize how to live well? And we accept this as an inevitable part of life. What I'm offering is a new approach. It's a new method that I developed that is basically a toolkit of 30 core, very practical principles that help parents and children learn those life lessons early rather than late, meaning proactively. And I want you to imagine this. What would have happened if your son or daughter at the age of 5 or 6 could actually internalize the same life wisdom that took you years and years and years to study? And what would have happened if our children could actually approach those challenges, the same things that keep us stuck in life, with much more clarity and confidence and resilience? And the reason I did that, and I want to tell you also a little bit about my background, I bring decades of experience working both from a legal and business world. So I was working with global corporations, in startups, working in governments, working with big foundations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I really worked at high pressure environments, and I could see how even the most senior level, at the higher level of leadership, break down under pressure, and how much childhood experiences shape them. And this is the reason I'm doing this work now, because I believe we, and especially our children, are capable and deserve to know those life lessons early on. And as part of the work I do, I focus both on adults and children themselves, meaning even in my book, each chapter, each principle is divided into two. The first talks about the principle itself, why it matters, why it's important, what is the reasoning behind that. And then the second part, how to apply it with kids. And the reason I do that, because at the end of the day, we can instruct our children, we can give them guidance, we can talk, we can teach, but they are learning also from our behavior. So I can say to my kids, dream big, go, you can do anything. But if I don't implement that in my own life, that would be a problem. And so this is in general what I do and what I aim to spread out.
I think of the blame game, where the blame game is where someone has to be at fault for something that happened, something that occurred, where we can say that the parents are at fault for not raising strong, obedient, healthy children who are independent. The child's at fault for not really partaking in what the parents are trying to instill in them, or the world's at fault for the school system, or just for all the social media, all the technology, right? So there's always like a blame game there. And it's not necessarily that we need to place blame on someone today, but more so of where do you see the problems in the different areas of how a parent can see the blame, a child can see the blame, and how the world can see the blame?
So great question. Personally, I don't believe in blame. I think that at the end of the day, everyone are doing the best they can, both parents, children. I believe also our educational system are trying to make the best and do the best that they can. And I'll give you one very, very simple example of how, parents try to do their best, but in many cases, it doesn't happen, not because they don't want to, because they were brought up a certain way. And I'll give you an example. There was one case where I remember entering a room and there was this woman with a child, and someone came in and asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? And the child immediately, I think it was about 9 or 10, immediately jumped and said, I want to be the prime minister. And the mother looked at him like half laughing, saying, don't get your hopes too high. You're going to be great. But the prime minister, I don't think and I could see the gaze in that child's eyes, how from enthusiasm, I knew that in that moment, a limiting belief was created. Now, that mother, I believe, did the best she could. She wouldn't want her child going through the same experience she went. She didn't want him to get hurt or get his hope too high. And that's why I think the role of parenting is so important, because no one does it because he wants to do it, because he wants to hurt the child, because it's not a game of blame. But if we will understand that one of the most important things we can do as human beings is to give those tools to ourselves and also to our children, we can create meaningful change in this world.
Yeah, I think of a situation that was not like exactly similar to that, where the child wanted to be the prime minister. It was just a child who was interested in swimming, and they could swim in the shallow end all day long, but they had a roadblock the moment they had to get into the deep end of the pool. The deep end, I guess, can be scary for children if they don't know how to swim, or even if they are a strong swimmer, the connection between if they can stand or if they can swim is not there yet. So you have to do the work to help them understand. It doesn't matter if you're swimming over here in the shallow end where you can stand up, or if you are swimming over here in this deep end where the only option for you at the time would be going to the side of the pool if you don't know how to tread water. So for this child, they knew how to swim really well. It's just that they had a fear of the deep end. And the mom, I'm sure, had all the anticipation for her son to swim in the deep end, but she wasn't necessarily pushing for him to say, hey, you need to get into the deep end today. You need to challenge yourself. It was more so of, you can swim in the shallow end, so that's good enough for me. So when a parent has that idea of my son or my child is good enough versus I want them to challenge it, to maybe swim into that area of fear or challenge, what is that conversation like?
So one of the principles in my book, it's funny that you said that, is that you're good enough. And I think children from a very young age, they have this awareness within them that they are good. It's only when they grow up and they have to face with comparison and other people opinions, they are at the stage where they are thinking, okay, I'm smart, but maybe I'm not smart enough. If I compare myself to someone else, I'm pretty, I'm not pretty enough. I'm intelligent, I'm not intelligent enough, and so on and so on. So in my opinion, enough, we're already enough in whatever we do. Okay. And I believe that each and every parent is doing the best he can. And he should let his kid, or she should let her kid have the privilege to decide what they want to do, while at the same time, yeah, like you're saying, pushing them in order to fulfill their goal, in order to reach what they want to reach. Because if we're just going to say, okay, this is, good enough, or just, they're not going to be able to cope in a word, and they're not going to be able to write their own dream. And this is also one of the things that I'm teaching as part of my work, is that even kids at a younger age, we should try, at least in the beginning, to give them that sense that they can, that at the end of the day, if they're not going to write their life script, someone else will write it for them. And this is super important, because I think that in many, many cases, if you don't develop that resilient early on, and if you're dragged by what other people do, say, or want from you, you're going to live someone else's life. Now imagine what happened if a child at the early age understand that. And it can start small. It could be, I wanna receive that belt in karate, or some other sport activity. And our role is to give them the tools so they can actually accomplish those goals.
Using the word life script, I think that's a really great way to present it, where life will say, hey, this is who you have to be. Okay. And let's say that version is maybe a better version than maybe their friends, their peers. So they say, whoa, I'm already better than most of my friends, like in the group. I'm really excelling. I should be happy of where I am. And there's this mindset of they can accept that happiness, or they can say, I want to be more, right? I am choosing to be more, right? And I think of like people who are some of the most prolific figures in like a sports. So like a Kobe Bryant, for example, he was a great basketball player, but he didn't just want to stop there. He wanted to be the greatest basketball player there, right? And I'm sure he had the support. He had all of the things going for him, but he had to have something within him, a drive, this idea that I'm not doing this by myself. I'm learning from others. This is why he gravitated toward Michael Jordan so much, because he knew Michael Jordan was one of the best that has ever done it in his lifetime. So he asked questions, he inquired, and then he put in the work ethic, because when his team would come onto the basketball court, Kobe has already warmed up. He has already went through one practice. And sometimes his team members will see that. They'll go, so you're working out 3 times a day. You know what Kobe would do? He would say, I'm going to work out 4 times a day. I'll work out 5 times a day. I'm going to work more than anyone else is willing to work. And this is more than this idea of good enough. It was this ethic that is like this, they call it the Black Mamba, like the Black Mamba mindset, where he was just so driven for something. And this is not everyone in the world, right? This is like the top 1 to 5% of people who have this dominant mindset of, I'm really pushing for something. And if we gave children that mindset, like to really empower them to dominate, to really push themselves, to excel at a high level that Kobe Bryant did. Again, we know it's around 1 to 5% of people will do it. But what if parents naturally, instill that into their child, where they can have that work ethic? What would happen to them?
I would like to add to your very, very important point. And, the example that you gave, it's indeed what you're saying. Great work ethic. It's something that came from inside. He had this internal belief. He really wanted it. But in addition to that, and this is something that I also speak about a lot, by doing it, by exercising 4 times instead of 3 times, he was also very independent of the good or bad opinions of other people. And this is one of my core principles. Having children understand that opinions of other people's are just opinion, and that they are the one writing their lives with, and they are the one who can actually be at any position where they can say, okay, whatever someone says about me, and it happens a lot, especially today with social media, with shaming, with the constant comparison. One of the things that I teach a lot is children being able to understand that they always have two voices in their head. You have the negative voice, the one that says, you know what, you should quit. It's raining. You cannot go work out. Or, someone said something bad about you in class. So let's just feel sad. And the encouraging voice, the positive voice. And there's this term that is called decentering. Decentering is basically the ability of people and children and adolescents, and I'll talk about that, to view the thoughts in their head as temporary passing event, and realizing that their thoughts are not a reflection of reality or of the self. Now, there was this really interesting research that shows that children as early as the age of 4 that are able to internalize this principle and that are able to understand and be aware of the thought, the constant chattering that we have in our head, are able to regulate a negative emotion. And it was also shown that adolescents that have a higher level of decentering were actually able to report lower levels of anxiety and depression symptoms. So there are so many factors involved, because even if you have the greatest dream, you need to be strong enough and confident enough to understand that you're gonna end up, meeting people that would not exactly support you. And that's fine to say, even to, my children and the parents I work with. This is something that I teach. I want to give children, it's not the harsh truth, because I believe this is a part of life. At the end of the day, not everyone are going to like what you do, especially when you excel, especially when you're doing something different that other people are not doing, and they need to be prepared.
When you're working with parents, right? Sometimes a parent might not be the man and the woman. It might just be one or the other. Maybe he's a single father or a single mother. And when a child is growing up, and especially if they see other children with two parents and they have one, they might feel as if they're not getting all the things that they need. So they might outsource their other parent. So they might not get the love from a woman that they would because their mom is not in the picture, or they might not get the discipline aspect of what the father would instill into them. So there's a piece missing at that point. How do you help parents understand the dynamic if it's a one parent household, or the child seeing that it's only one parent? Like, how can we give them what they're missing or what they think they're missing?
Okay, so I start by understanding that this is a normal part of life, first in the eye of the parent, because I believe that once the parent has this insecurity, it passes on to the children. Okay, and there are many different kinds of families, and the moment that we have this fear, because everyone are dealing with something, you can have the perfect families, but they will have their own issues. I believe that everyone in this world has their own baggage. And when you look at it that way, I think that you're more able to understand that as a parent, you're doing the best you can, and you're going to give the best to. It might be different than, the standard family, but at the end of the day, because everyone are handling, their own aches, their own problems, their own challenges, I don't see that as something that would, stop a parent from internalizing the many, many lessons that are so important for children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I start to look at the book now, The Empowered Child, and the word empowered, right? To be able to be powerful or to be able to be deliberate is going to be paramount in that title. Now, I think of how many children, they grow up with this idea that they're not good enough. They look at their peers and they basically have a hard time even feeling powerful into any regards, even if their parents are telling them that they love them or if they are so amazing. It's hard for them to accept that if their peers are saying otherwise, because we have a problem with bullying, whether it be personal, like in your personal space, or cyberbullying online, which is very paramount today, where most children are dealing with problems that you and I have never dealt with before because technology is so big. I remember growing up, we had AOL, and AOL was a dial up where you would have to basically use your telephone line in order to get on the internet so you couldn't receive any phone calls. So every time someone would call my house, they would always get a busy signal because I was online. And online, I was in the chat groups and I was talking to all these strangers, and it was a good time. But today, it has become an area where people pick on people because they feel as if the only way that they can be empowered is by belittling somebody. So there's two dynamics here where one, a child can feel empowered and not care about what their peers say. And then the other aspect, a person is going to feel empowered when they belittle one of their peers.
Yeah. And I think this is a great point. This is one of the, central lessons that I think is important to teach. And the younger your children are, when you teach them, the children are like sponge until the age of 7. So they're actually observing everything that you're saying and your behavior. And I'll give you an example, with one parent I work with, and she really internalized, the work we did together with her daughter. And there's this whole new phenomenon, I don't know if you know it, like of the Labubu dolls, that all the kids are crazy about them and, are buying them and, they're in constant competition who has it. And this specific child didn't like the Labubu doll, while all the other girls in class loved it. And, and by her mom being very authentic and teaching her that one of the most important things is to be authentic to herself, because that is true power. When you show up with everything you have, with all your glory, by being exactly who you are, that's infectious. That girl came back to her mom and said, "You know what, Mom? I told them I don't like those dolls. I don't like those dolls." And then she told her, after a few sessions that I was talking to this mother, she said, she came to me and she said that other girls came to her and said, "You know what? We also don't like those dolls, but everyone are talking about them. But so we feel like we have to." So I think it starts with the parent at younger ages. But I think this lesson, the fact that, a girl can walk in and see everyone acting this way, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier if you do it with your children when they are young, when you're teaching them that being authentic, I look at adults. How many adults are not authentic and are not really living, their true authentic life because they're afraid what someone else would think about them, what he would say, how would I look, what would happen if I do that. And if you have this inner source of empowerment saying, this is who I am, you can do anything. You can come with you can come with the shirt that everyone hates. You can come with the idea or with the a aspect that other would find, I don't know, ridiculous. But the moment you are comfortable in your own skill and you can say to your friends, "You know what, I know everyone are going to this party, but I'm going to pass this time." And you say that with a confidence. And you say that because that's exactly how you feel. And being true to yourself is one of the most important things. Once we give that to children, and I think how many years it took even me to get that. Once you give them that tool early, you're raising an empowered child that knows their power and knows how to set boundaries.
Yeah, I think of now where a parent might have to take a step back because not all the fights that a child is fighting, a parent should partake in. So, for example, bullying, a parent could possibly step in, especially if it's really bad. But then if they're having, a conversation with their friends about which things are popular or not, maybe it's something they have to experience for themselves, because we all know that if parents are going to fight every single fight for that child, the child's going to have lower self-esteem for themselves because they are not winning anything, right? Their parents are winning it. So the parents are literally stealing the self-esteem from what that child can attain from fighting a fight from themselves. So my question to you is, how do parents know, or how are they able to differentiate between what fights they should fight for their children or what fights should they allow for their children?
I think one of the main red lines is any type of physical abuse. Once this has to do with physical violence, especially in schools where the issues are not, being taken care of in appropriate way, then this is the role of the parent to protect his child, to talk to the principal, to talk to the teacher, and do everything he can in order to protect his child. And, there are different levels, of also emotional challenges that kids go through. I think at the end of the day, we don't want to raise, what you call helicopter moms that will, or dads that will come and just hover around. We need to, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much we teach them. They're going to have their own struggle no matter what we do. Okay. But we have to make sure that we at least give them the proper guidance. And in cases where we say, okay, this is our red line, this is something that, we see that our child is struggling with, this is our role, in my opinion, to step in and to make sure we do everything we can to protect our child.
Yeah, and that also teaches a child that their parents care versus saying, oh, they don't care about me, they're just letting me go through this. And I know it could be tough for parents to see their child struggle through the safe areas. Again, using swimming, I think is a very easy thing for parents to recognize, because they at some point are going to get their kids swim lessons, whether they do it themselves or if they pay someone to do the swim lessons. And typically swimming is laborious. Like, it's a lot of work to swim. You got to get the kicks, you got to get the arms, you're huffing and puffing. You don't see the sweat because you're already in the water. So, but they can see their kids just like, wow, they're really trying. And I remember one time I had a father, he came in for the swim lesson and he was like, hey, Mike, can we do a father-son swim lesson? I said, sure thing. So he came in, and probably like 5 minutes into the swim lesson, he came to me, he goes, oh my God, he does this every single week? I go, yes, he does this every single week. And he didn't realize how tough it was for that child until he had to experience it for himself. And I think it's so powerful for a parent to understand what a child is going through rather than just saying, hey, you need to do this. Because even though at some point they might have done that, that might have come from their parents and that experience that they had when they were younger. So they said, well, my mom and dad made me go to swim lessons, so I guess you have to go to swim lessons. And so they forget how it was when they were kids, because now they're the authority. And so they're just doing what is basically the habit of what they have learned in life. And this is not only for the positive things, it can also be for the negative things, where a parent maybe follow some of the bad habits or some of the bad choices that they have lived in as when they were a child. And so basically they replicate that. And I only can think of, how can a parent know that what they're doing or what they're instilling in their child is going to be good? Because there's this mindset of this, I used to do it, right? This used to work for me, right? Don't cry, put some dirt on it. Like, this idea of, just because I have lived that, it doesn't mean it's healthy for you to live it too.
So I think the main thing here is that, and I really love and connect to your example of the swimming pool, because in my opinion, when you're going to send your child for the first time to swim, you're not going to send him without a life vest. You're not going to send him without a teacher that will guide him. But in parenting, this is exactly what we do. We send our children to life without what I call, and this is one of my lecture, life vest for your child, without that life vest, because in many cases, we don't have the life vest for ourselves. And in many cases, our life vest is lacking. And, in order to be a lawyer, I had to go through many exams, but in order to be a parent, you don't really have to learn or do anything. And unfortunately, this is a part of life. Unfortunately, we as parents are going to make mistakes. No matter how enlightened we think we are and how much we think we contribute to our kids, we're going to do it. This is a part of life. But the more we acquire important information, the more we understand that in order to grant our children the best tools, we also have to work on ourselves. And we also have to dismantle our own limiting belief. And that's the only way that we can actually, help our children and understand that, we are going in the right path.
Mm. So the book that you have written, The Power Child, who's that book perfect for? Is it perfect for a parent who is struggling, a parent who's looking to add more tools for the toolbox, or possibly a parent who is maybe a first-time parent who doesn't know left from right?
So the book that I wrote, the main audience of the book is parents for children ages 4 until 15, coaches, educators, and it's for I think the uniqueness of the book is that while many, many, many books focus on how to deal with the problem, what are you going to do after the problem has already showed up and you have to deal with it? The kids has this tantrum, or you already have, the social problems and you don't know what to do. The uniqueness of the book is that A, it's very practical. And remember my background, so that's why it was important for me to keep it very practical. And B, it's focused on prevention. So meaning, you want to build a very solid foundation for your child from the get-go. It's worth mentioning that I just signed a deal for a new edition of the book with one of the biggest social science academic publisher. So the next version of the book will include more research and more information and even more practical steps. And the problem that I address in my book, and by the way, one of the focus in the new edition would also be social media, bullying, shaming. So it's building that foundation, but at the same time, being able to give practical tools for the problem after it arises. But of course, I would recommend, parents to build it from the get-go as early as possible.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many parents would come to me and they would always ask for resources for helping them understand and raise their children. And I can give them a whole list of psychology books, but when it comes to like a book that can really help them understand their child, there's very few of them because, as you said, there's a lot of books that help with solving the problem, saying, okay, if this is the problem, this is what you need to do to fix it. And I think they only are reactive at that point versus let me be proactive. Let me look at how I can really do the work to create a child that's going to be empowered rather than just to fix a child as they become broken. As you said, a lot of people, they wait for trauma, they wait for the hardships, they wait for something to break down, right? People don't go to the mechanic and say, hey, just check out my car, make sure the brakes are working, make sure everything is good. It's not until the brakes don't work, it's not until the oil light comes on, do we start to do the work, saying, okay, let me bring my car into the mechanic. And this is something we can do in every day of our life where we say, all right, let me check in. Let me see how they're doing. And if we do the work early on, as you said, we can create that familiarity. We can create that bond with our children. And so they want to come to us if they need help or they need assistance or advice. And we can be prepared and have the tools to help them. Because if someone came to me and say, hey, Michael, can you build my house? I'm going to say, no, I don't have the tools. Right? I would have to acquire them. And the same thing is true in parenting. As you said, parents don't necessarily learn how to become parents. They're just kind of tossed into the deep end of life and saying, all right, good luck. And most of the time, they just use their life experiences and saying, well, this is what I have gone through. This is what I've done. Or maybe they even say that this is what I went through. I don't want my child to go through it. And you have to ask yourself, if you don't give them the things that you went through, can they build themselves to be the person that you have become? So the challenges, trials, tribulations, they all can be stepping stones, but there are going to be ways where we can do it in a healthy manner rather than what the world might be showing us in a toxic and a demeaning way. So all of this is to say is that we talked about so many different things. And I know there's going to be parents out there who are looking for the next step. They're looking for help. They're looking for support. So if you could, can you please tell people how they can find you, reach out, and then share with us some final words or some final thoughts that we can walk away with?
Yeah, of course. So you can reach me at my website, Michal Gez, MICHALGZ.com. And for coaching sessions, for lectures, I'll be happy to hear from you. And as I said in the beginning of the conversation, I think that we have amazing opportunity to raise resilient and confident kids from early, while at the same time introducing them with life-affirming beliefs instead of limiting beliefs. So thank you for having me, and thank you for these great opportunities. I appreciate it a lot.
Of course. And I loved having you on. And I know there's many parents right now, as you said, those final words of, man, my kid is a little bit older now. I should have done this earlier. I should have started yesterday. But this is not so much to say that we need to look at your shortcomings, what has happened in your past. Let's look at what you can do today. The links are right down below. You can reach out to Michal and you can learn about how she can help support you and your family so that you can raise empowered children. Michal, thank you so much for coming on, spending some time, and of course, talking about your work today.
Thank you. Have a great evening.